Welcome back. President Biden has seen no shortage of Republican opposition to his vaccine mandate strategy. But when it comes to the Democrats and their $3.5 trillion spending plan, in addition to united Republican opposition, the president has at least one Democrat, but probably a few more, including Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, saying, not so fast. In an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, Manchin called for a strategic pause, writing, "I've always said if I can't explain it, I can't vote for it, and I can't explain why my Democratic colleagues are rushing to spend $3.5 trillion. Well, Senator Joe Manchin joins me now. Senator, welcome back.
Good to be with you, Chuck. Thank you.
Let me start. My first question, and actually I'm going to cede to the Speaker of the House. Take a listen to what she said. I want you to respond.
Sure.
Where would you cut? Child care, family medical leave paid for, universal pre-K, home health care, so important.
I think that's what I hear a lot from Democrats on Capitol Hill. It's like, we get it. We get what he's not for. But how do you get there? So what should not be included in this bill?
Chuck, first of all, everything that the Speaker, which I have the greatest respect for, has mentioned that I've been for and voted for. We spent $5.4 trillion, and a lot of that really continues way into next year. We haven't dispersed it all. The only thing I've said, put a pause on. Shouldn't we basically put a pause on with all the unknowns that we have right now we're facing? Don't know where COVID's going to go. Inflation is still very high and rampant. And then on top of that, the geopolitical unrest that we have going on, we might be challenged there. Don't you think we ought to be prepared for that? Since we don't have the emergency that we had with the American Rescue Plan when the President first came in and we passed?
What is, let me ask you this though, this is long-term infrastructure that in some ways, you know, they call it human infrastructure.
It's social reforms.
I understand that. Social reforms, however you want to look at it, when people have different names. They take investment. This isn't short-term, and it wants to be paid for. And if it's paid for, there shouldn't be an inflation problem.
And the only thing I have said, there's not a rush to do that right now. We don't have an urgency. Don't you think we ought to debate a little bit more, talk about it, and see what we've got out there?
So you're not against this? You could support this $3.5 trillion plan?
No, I cannot support $3.5 trillion.
Okay, so that is all right, now
yeah.
we're getting to Brad. It is not a time issue. It really is a cost issue.
We got 5.4 out right now.
Okay.
Okay. That's a 3.5 they want to spend.
Over 8 or 10 years, depending on what.
3.5, but still, yeah, it's going to be based. It's going to be a lot more than 3.5 over 8 or 10 years because it'll continue. All those programs will never come off. They're only been scored out that far. But with that being said, that's a social reform. I'm just saying that we should be looking at everything, and we're not. And that we don't have the need to rush into this and get it done within 1 week because there's some deadline we're meeting, or someone's going to fall through the cracks. We've got child nutrition, all the things I want to make sure that children are getting taken care of, that people are basically having an opportunity to go back to work. We have 11 million jobs that we haven't filled. 8 million people still unemployed. Something's not matching up there. And with that being said, we have people talking all the time that we can't find help, or there's a reason for that. We haven't found out.
So what should they? So what would this bill look like if you were writing it from scratch?
Well, if I was writing it from scratch, I'd be looking at, first of all, adjusting the tax code. I've always said that. I said basically the 2017 tax code was weighted unfairly to the wealthy. We need to change that. That's why I agreed to go to reconciliation. But I'm not going to go to a situation I'm going to shoot myself in the foot and not be competitive globally. I think the corporations should be paying. There shouldn't be anyone escaping not paying their fair share. I think the IRS should be able to do its job. All of those things. But when you do all that, Chuck, realistically and honestly, what does that spin off without going in debt? And then look at that number it spins off and find out what your greatest need is.
If right now, it seems as if the plan is to pay for as much of this as they can. Is whatever they come up with the pay for, is that your ceiling? If it's $2 trillion?
The plan also, Chuck, had in it you could borrow up to $1.7 trillion. Okay, that was in the bill.
Right.
Okay.
We see where this is going. They want to pay for about $2 trillion. Deficit spend with dynamic scoring. Look, the infrastructure bill that you helped facilitate has dynamic scoring, which some would argue is deficit spending until we see if the economic growth actually does.
We could have paid for that very easily without any of the dynamic scoring, but because you know why? They wouldn't go for it. They wouldn't basically allow us move in that direction.
So why is it okay to do that and you don't want to do that?
No, we're still going to do some dynamic scoring and all that, but let's be responsible and reasonable about it.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. Chuck, the thing of it is we've got to get back to this country to where that we can look at each other and agree to disagree and then work through our differences. That's where the Senate comes in. That's a deliberate body that we have. Who would have thought we'd have got 19 Republicans to vote for the bipartisan infrastructure, the hard infrastructure.
Physical infrastructure.
And that's the most urgent need that we have. You want one that needs to be done?
Right.
That one for 30 years we have deferred maintenance.
Oh, well, let's talk about the issue of climate regulations and
sure.
much of this bill.
Absolutely.
there's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of assumptions that you're not supportive of this. Some say because of West Virginia's reliance on coal.
Sure.
How much of that is true?
Well, let me say, let's look at the facts. And I've always said this, Chuck, you're entitled to your opinion. You're just not entitled to create your own facts to support your opinion. Since 2000, the year 2000, 20 years ago, 52% of our electricity came from coal. About 16% came from natural gas, and about 9%, 9.5% came from renewables. Fast forward to the day, 19% from coal, 40% from gas, and up to 20% from renewables. The transition's happening. And that clean energy standard, they want to spend billions of dollars to have utilities do what they're already doing. Makes no sense to me to pay a utility to do what they're going to do anyway.
Right, but don't we need to accelerate this? Do you agree that we need to accelerate this transition?
You accelerate the transition. Don't you think if you have to pay a profit-making Fortune 500 or basically trade on the stock exchange, pay them to do something that they've already done and basically still have resiliency built in? We're going to leave ourselves in a situation by 2030 that we're not going to have reliability. That's what I'm concerned about. And we're going to move. We've got 30% of the electricity that was from coal was not from coal today.
All right, but 50 years from now, do you think folks are going to look back at this Congress and say, boy, I'm glad they were fiscally worried too much about the fiscal and not enough about climate mitigation?
There's a balance. There's always been a balance, Chuck. You know, and I've said that, and I'm willing to find that balance. But, you know, to do it in 7 days, to come back and do it in 1 week, when we don't have...
Are you a hard no?
On the 3.5?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a number you can support?
I haven't looked at that, because you know why? They won't look at it responsibly and reasonably for a tax code or any type of
This
revenue.
feels like a one-way negotiation. You're in the catbird seat. You're the 50th vote, but don't you need to say what you're for?
I have been giving. I could say that I'm against this and that and everything. I'm for an awful lot of the things. I'm for also putting guardrails on. I think that if you're going to make sure that we're helping our children, let's make sure that children are getting the best benefit of that. Let's make sure that a guardian or a parent is doing everything they can to nurture that child and give them the resources to do it. But if you don't have any work requirements, there's no means testing on so much of this. It doesn't make sense to me.
$3.5 trillion is agreed to by 49
Everybody's
other...
looking at numbers.
I understand that.
Everybody's looking at numbers.
Are you going to be the lone vote against President Biden's
Well,
agenda?
I don't think that I am the lone vote, and I think you know that too.
Right, but would you be willing to be the lone vote?
I've said this, if I can't go home and explain it, I can't vote for it.
And right now you don't think you can explain
I
that?
can't explain what we're doing now.
The vaccine mandate that President Biden's doing, are you supportive of it?
The president has done what the president is responsible to do. He's looking out for the most vulnerable. And if people are sick and tired, as I am, of this pandemic, of wearing masks and everything else, get vaccinated. Get vaccinated. But now I will speak on the private sector, going into the businesses, I'd rather incentivize versus penalize.
But if the incentives don't work, what choice did he have?
Well, basically, most of the businesses in the country are less than 100 employees.
Yeah.
So we put no restrictions there, and it's always going over the 100. Those are responsible. Fortune 500, usually traded on the stock exchange. They have to do the responsible thing. If not, they lose their market share.
Right. Senator Joe Manchin, I know you're doing a few other interviews. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me,
sharing your
Chuck.
perspective.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.